I'm just going to go through. So we're interviewing you mainly. I mean, I know of you mainly because of your prowess as a tipster, and a lot of this I didn't know. I got to admit the broadcasting stuff that you've done. So I'm just going to rattle down through some of your CV. 1994-96 Hackney commentator. So we're on greyhounds now. 2000 to 2005 Crayford commentator. 1998 to 2004 Wimbledon commentator. And I'm assuming this is all running in tandem with. You know, what you've just described that you were doing. So, you know, how did all that come about, and where did your love of greyhounds come from, even if it did? And just tell us about that.
Love of greyhounds, before I did a commentary, I think like many people of my era, was given a real jolt by two greyhounds, Scurlog Champ and Ballyregan Bob. When I was at uni in Brighton on the south coast, I attended Hove, and Ballyregan Bob broke the world record, beat an American dog called Joe Dump. And we were there at the track, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Not knowing that this was a one-off for excitement, for calibre of dog, and for the amazing atmosphere at Hove Stadium. We used to go there once a week from university. We were based in Brighton. And I thought it was great, and I love dogs. You know, we had dogs when we were kids, and these were sensational athletes. People don't understand how remarkable they are. And I used to go to different greyhound meetings, and then, as I did with horse racing, I'd commentate with the horses on the TV. Sometimes I was watching them, as all kids do, and I thought, this is going to be so much easier with dogs, because you've got 6 dogs, even though it's only 30 seconds, but you've got all these colours of horses, and you can have up to 16, 20 horses in a race. I thought, yeah, I'll start doing this. And I go to the dogs, I go to Walthamstow, I go to Old Wembley, I go to Catford, I go to Romford. I wouldn't punt, and I just commentate on the dogs to myself, and I thought, oh my God, this is easy. And the guys commentating on the course were just doing the numbers. And after lots of practice, I found out I could do numbers and names together. And I thought, I must have an edge here. So I wrote to, I think it was Mike Rayner, who was head of Wimbledon Greyhounds, GRA, they're part of GRA group. And I said, can I come along and talk to you with a view to maybe getting in your commentary roster? And he said, well, come along, Paul. Let's see what you're made of. And I went on the mic at a real low-key meeting for one race, and I called the race. And I did names and numbers all the way around. And I'd always do a cheesy pun at the end, depending on the name of the greyhound.
Pre-prepared cheesy pun?
No, not pre-prepared. A lot of the time, no. It's funny, isn't it? You know, a lot of the horse race commentators do, and I say to myself, oh my God, that's terrible. Stop it. And Tony Morris was the main bookmaker in the ring in those days at Wimbledon. And we came off, Mike Rayner and I came off, we walked down the steps, and Tony came up to Mike and he said, you better grab this boy. I've never heard anybody do that before. And I didn't think I was particularly good. You just do what comes naturally. Sometimes you have a natural aptitude for something, whether it's washing the dishes or doing a greyhound commentary or whatever it may be. Everybody has an aptitude for something, it's just finding it. And in that moment, I think I found it. And from that moment onwards, Mike made me the resident commentator. And of course it meant, because that was the home of the Derby, you get to commentate the Derby, all the heats and everything. And that led to one of my biggest breaks, which was working with the comedians Hale and Pace.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That was a series that Hale and Pace did for Jobs for the Boys, where they'd go and do different jobs around the country, mainly aligned around sport. And one of the jobs they had to do was they had to become horse racing commentators. And along the way, the natural stepping stone was to become a greyhound commentator. So I took them under my wing for 6 weeks, went to their houses, taught them how to do it, did it on track, and lovely guys. It was kind of nice in a way, because I'd never been in the limelight before, in the media spotlight, working for the BBC, working for these two guys who were massive names at the time, and they were right at the top of the comics tree, Hale and Pace, and it was a sensational time for me. And it was when the Derby was not at its height, was slightly coming down, but it was still a big thing, you know. You'd still get crowds of 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 on Derby final night. And then I'd get to go in the centre of the track afterwards and interview the winning connection. I mean, it was brilliant. It was lovely. You felt you were worth something doing that. But when the BBC asked me to do it, it was like, it was almost some. It was the cream on the cake. It was wonderful.
And that was the days when there would still be a massive crowd, there'd be a massive
Huge
buzz, there'd be massive betting going on. I mean, how do you feel now that I think all of those venues you mentioned, bar Crayford, and they're gone? as greyhound racing tracks. So I mean, how does that sort of feel? Did you see it coming?
I think everybody saw it coming. Stadiums are run down. GRA were bloody awful what they did, but the industry as a whole, short-termism, short profit. That's all they wanted. And of course, a lot of these tracks were on land that was worth a lot of money. You know, if they were going to sell them to housing developments or whatever development may be. I mean, Wimbledon worth a lot of money. Wembley, it wasn't worth them carrying on anymore because the crowds were getting lower and lower and lower. Haringey was a big one to go as well. And as you say, Crayford's the only one which is only just inside the M25 ring that is left in London. You know, you'd had greyhound racing at Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea play, and they used to get immense crowds there. The brilliant White City Stadium, before Wimbledon got the derby, you get crowds of 20, 30, 40,000 and more. So it's an industry that for years has been on its knees, and I'd love to go back to commentating live at a track, but A, the crowds are awful. I don't think I get the same buzz, and B, I get still paid a pittance if I did that now.
And I mean, are you involved with greyhound racing at all now, even as a fan? Or you?
I go very occasionally. I mean, I used to be for a year. I'd write a greyhound column for the Evening Standard, mainly on the TV Trophy, which I love doing, and I was greyhound writer for the Racing and Football Outlook for a small time as well. For me, it doesn't entice me as much. You know, the one stadium we haven't mentioned, Simon, is the Great Walthamstow, which was a tremendous place to go for something like the Laurels all the way through the competition, and the crowds, and everybody said, yeah, Walthamstow. Two things I remember at Walthamstow when you mentioned it to anybody: chicken and chips in a basket, and Charlie Chan's nightclub afterwards. And it was just a great night out. Is greyhound racing now a great night out? Nowhere near as good as it was 20, 25, 30 years ago, sadly.
And something else, this is going back in time probably, you were racing editor on Teletext. Now for younger viewers, Teletext was very important at the time, wasn't it? For fast results, and tell us a bit about that.
Well, I'd done 3 years as chief broadcaster at Ladbrokes, and it was hugely enjoyable, but I wanted a new challenge. I love writing. I love broadcasting, but I love writing. And job came up for the first ever racing editor on Teletext, which was the channel for Teletext. We had CFAX on BBC 1 and 2 and Teletext on Channel 4. And it was a great opportunity for me. They were based in the ITM building in Gray's Inn Road, this great big modern glass-fronted building. And I'd never been as nervous in my life as I was when I went for my interview. And the guy that interviewed me was known to be a bit of a bully and a bit of a hard man. And I did my interview, half an hour I did with him. His name was Peter. And he said, right, here's the test. He goes, and it was the Newmarket July meeting. He said, give me a tip today and we'll go down the boozer, have some lunch, and we'll back this horse. So no pressure at all. I mean, unbelievable pressure. I was nervous now. So we had our lunch, semi-inebriated by 3 or 4 pints, and I'm a lightweight. And we went into the betting office, and the next race was like a 14-runner handicap. And Paulie goes, right, here's your chance, impress me. I mean, it was a very unfair thing to do. And I picked out this horse at 7-1. End of story is it win by 3 lengths. Peter takes me back to the offices in Gray's Inn Road, sits me down, he goes, I'm very impressed with you. He goes, I'm not really worried about your writing, but you can tip, and part of your job is to do a tipping column. And there and then he says, you've got the job. And I nearly fainted under the pressure. I was so relieved. I remember ringing my mum, my dad, my wife, my auntie, my friends, everybody from his office. And yeah, it was the next stepping stone. It was the next stepping stone to doing proper writing in papers.
Okay, so tell us a bit more about the writing in papers and also the racing work that you've done, the racing work that you've done as a broadcaster. Well,
you know, it's like, I mean, we could be here for hours because I've been lucky enough to have so many different positions and so many jobs. When Press Association moved up to Hull, I then had to become a freelance contracting. So I did Teletext for about 2.5 years. They actually moved to Fleet Street from Gray's Inn Road. which is an enjoyable time. Worked with a great team there, really loved it. Did Daily Mail, did Morning Star. And then the second time I won the Racing Boat Naps was with a sports paper called Sport First, the first ever all sports paper in the UK. I mean, Italy have 3 football papers just with football, and I could never believe it that England, the UK and Ireland never had an all sport paper. And I worked for them for, I think they lasted a year and a quarter, and had a really colourful editor in Chris Mann, the former Sky News frontman. And he would always go out for lunches and have a few beers and come back into the office in the afternoon and he'd go, "So what's your nap, Paul? What's your nap?" And I go, and he goes, "Right, I'm having 150 quid on it." And he'd go out, and every time my nap lost, he'd castigate me in front of the whole of the crew. And he'd go, "Oh, I don't think Paul's going to be here for very long." And of course, then in the first season, I won the Naps table. And in the first year they were published, I won the Naps table. And I came in, and he's all pally, he's like all over me, and we go to the big luncheon, and we have the cheque and the big trophy, and Chris loved it. Chris loved the limelight. He's a natural broadcaster, natural showman, lots of charisma. And he got me back to the office, and we were both a little bit worse for wear. And he said, "So what do you want?" And I, being wet behind the ears, said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "How much money do you want for us to keep you?" And I said, "Well, you have to double my wages." And I thought he'd just laugh at me, and he doubled my wages. But the paper only remained in business for another 6 months.
I was going to ask why the paper didn't. Why do you think it is that one and the Sportsman after it? Why do you think that format doesn't work in the UK?
I've no idea at all. I mean, our love of football is amazing. Our love of horse racing is amazing. But it probably tells us how much more Italians love their football at the heart of everything. And football's immense in this country. It just didn't work. It just didn't work.